Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing fabulously well, and I'm doing well, thank you very much, and all the better for being with you and being able to share with you this fabulous story tonight. But before we get started, you know the rules. Go and get yourself something special to drink, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, I grew up in an environment where the idiosyncratic was quite normal in my life, although let's just say at the time I was obliviously unaware that anything was actually bizarre, as the outlandish can seem so normal to a young boy when you don't know any different. As far as I knew, other young boys were experiencing similar strange phenomenon in their life, only they didn't talk about it that much. Me and my brother Luton were rough and tumble boys that loved getting our hands dirty and spending ages playing cowboys and Indians and squirting water pistols at each other, riding bicycles, getting up to all kinds of mischief. You know, the kind of roguish, playful things young boys do at that young age, when you think you're invincible and are going to live forever and ever, as you foolishly perceive that you're invulnerable and indestructible, rather like a heavyweight piece of farming machinery, as bad things only ever happen in the movies and in your nightmares, but then they're not real, are they? And if they do happen in real life, it's only ever to people you don't know, so that doesn't really count. Well, that's what I thought at the time anyway. My older brother, who was only older by a year, although it may as well have been a century, as he was old beyond his years, the most sapiently prudent and perceptibly shrewd individual, with his feet permanently embedded on the ground, and he always went into every decision he made cautiously, only after having scrupulously deliberated all the options, rather like a wise professor. My brother did not know the meaning of impulsive spontaneity, as that was like a foreign language to him that he couldn't comprehend or make any sense of. Indeed, he loathed surprises of any kind, unless they were the good surprises, of course. But the surprises that crept up on you unawares were not usually good, like a sudden rain shower or an unexpected feverish cold. Let's just say my brother's judicious traits stayed with him throughout his life, so even when he got married, he made a checklist about all the qualities he was looking for in a woman before he actually popped the question to his wife Hattie. But to be fair, at the top of his list he had written sense of humour, intelligent, witty, and a very good friend, so he had a wise, savvy, perspicacious head on his shoulders. I'll give him that, but even so I was heartily glad I didn't live by such regimental attitudes. It was so much better to be as natural as a free-flowing waterfall, or an old oak tree whose leaves turn gold in early autumn and drop to the ground before winter arrives, as the seamless things of nature never have to think what they need to do, they just do it, which to my way of thinking is much more fluid, and is how we should all approach our lives, rather like a paper boat gliding down a stream and going with the flow, and when obstacles arrive, just navigating themselves around it. It's called living in the moment, not in the past, not in the future, but right now. Ironically, me and my brother were both the splitting image of our father, but our personalities were so dramatically different. I was curious, inquiring, very inquisitive, allowing the adventurous side of my personality to sometimes get me into trouble, rather like a kite being blown on the wind, suddenly getting entangled in a quaking aspen tree, as I did little to restrain my impulsive intrigue, which could sometimes invite me to be rather reckless. A disagreeable, rather unfortunate trait my brother failed to understand, as he found my headstrong determination almost enigmatic. My father was a born and bred Alaskan thoroughbred. He was over 6 foot tall, with a big statuesque physique, and a strong outdoor type. He was ruggedly handsome, everybody said so, with buoyant, bouncy, curly black hair, green eyes and olive skin. He always looked as if he'd been on a beach holiday somewhere exotic and had caught a healthy suntan, when that was never the case. I think his skin naturally possessed that enviable, warm, healthy glow. When me and my brother were told we looked like carbon copies of him, or shall I say a smaller version of my dad, We were over the moon, as that was a big compliment to us. What young boy doesn't want to be like his father? And in our eyes, our dad was our hero. Our dad could make fire without using a match or lighter, creating friction using flint and steel. So I was in awe of his masterful abilities that I longed to emulate. How could he do that, I'd wonder? He showed us how it was done, but try as we might, we never succeeded to make fire ourselves. Even my mother's friends would tease her and say, "If you don't want him, I'll have him. He's absolutely gorgeous." My mother's eyes would light up with a naughty twinkle, and teasingly she'd say to her friends, "Keep your hands off my all-American hunk, will you? He's all mine. I'm not about to share him with anyone. Chocolate maybe, and that's a very big maybe, but my husband, definitely not my husband," which everyone would burst into hoots of laughter, and my mother's friends would say, "I don't think you'd even share your chocolates with us, Serena. You're not that generous." My parents had met when my mother visited Alaska and was taken on a hike where my father was the tour guide, giving the tourists a vibrant taste of the wilderness there. The rest is, of course, history, as my parents fell in love with each other and tied the knot in Alaska, where they settled down for the first few years. Me and my brother were born in Fairbanks, but my parents moved to England after my mother became incredibly homesick, claiming that it was bitterly cold in Alaska and she couldn't stomach such cruel, unforgiving winters. They soon settled down in a charming little Hampshire village called Appleshaw, close to where my mother had grown up as a young girl. The village was filled with long lines of quirky houses, some dating back for many generations. It was an idyllic part of the world, cosily basked in the heart of the English countryside, where the area was dotted with farmland, hiking trails, fields of cows and sheep, along with meadows with horses. It had a real countrified ambience about it, but it wasn't too far from the main town of Andover. The cottage where we lived was over 300 years old. It was an arresting double-storey stone and brick dwelling, with large sash windows throughout the cottage. The sash windows to the front of the cottage overlooked the village green, the grey ribbon of asphalt, and the long line of cottages on the opposite side of the road. It was common to hear the clip-clop of horses' hooves trotting down the road, which was a regular daily event for us. Bridge Cottage was a quirky, pretty cottage that oozed charm and personality. It was steeped in a rich, vibrant history. The foundations and walls of the home were thick, as the cottage itself was built in a time when things were intended to last forever, not like now, when you can buy houses today with ridiculously paper-thin walls that are clearly not designed to withstand the test of time. It was a Grade 2 listed building, which meant you had to apply for planning permission if you ever intended to perform any building improvements to the cottage. My mother only ever liked to live in houses like this, that were old. She claimed they oozed character, and that more modern architecture was awfully dull and uninspirational. In England, people rarely do look at old houses with a great deal of appreciation. There were clouds of feathery purple wisteria, intermingled with tumbling pink roses, that climbed the walls of the cottage with a graceful ebullience. The white cottage was fringed by a neatly trimmed box hedge, and there was a white little wicker gate that opened out onto a village green, a sprawling ribbon of green grass, where ancient oak trees gallantly pirouetted into the sky, with a pompous impertinence, proudly showing off their large boughs of viridescent foliage that would become a magnificent golden colour during the autumn months. And then by late autumn, the trees would shed their leaves to embrace naked branches stripped of all their foliage, and the ribbon of green turf would be covered in a confetti of golden leaves. The yard on every side of the cottage was filled with colourful flower beds, bursting with perennials, where blue delphiniums intermingled with zinnias, daisies, larkspurs, begonias, and all kinds of other flowers. A higgledy-piggledy concoction of cottage flowers that was poetry in motion, as the flowers folded into each other in a fetching tangle of colour. There was a scattering of apple trees spread over the lawn, a purple buddleia tree. To the right-hand side, opposite the large white gate, there was a white pebbled driveway that led to an ancient whitewashed garage with a green roof, where all the chopped firewood was stored in preparation for those long cold winter nights. In the back of the property was a large green oil tank, to fill up the oil-fired bright red Aga. We had that on in our kitchen throughout the summer and winter months. I remember once in a while this huge petrol truck with long pipes would visit our premises to refill our oil tank in the back, and it would make one hell of a hissing noise. We had wooden pole fencing overlooking the neighbour's meadow, where we'd watch the horses grazing in the fields, and when the apples were in season, we would feed the horses apples and peppermints. They loved to eat peppermints. Bridge Cottage was unquestionably haunted. Sometimes when we were little, me and my brother would play with our train set, and when this happened the door of our bedroom would creak open, and it would make such a terrible squeaking sound that me and my brother would both look up to see who was there. We would see a man standing there, with long shining black boots that were so shiny you could see your own reflection in them. He was wearing some kind of military outfit, with a long line of very smart gold buttons down his jacket, and a tight-fitting pair of white riding breeches. He had short dark hair and a walrus-like moustache, with very intense, deep-set brown eyes. He looked to be in his early 30s, but he seemed nice enough to me. To this day I still ponder why me and my brother were so accepting of his serendipitous presence in our bedroom. For us it seemed quite natural to have him around, and at the time we never even mentioned his appearance to my mother, and I'm not even sure exactly why. I guess children can be much more accepting of the unexplainable and the mysterious. I can remember this gentleman so clearly, all these years later, with actually a great deal of fondness, surprisingly enough. My memory has not actually faded, whereas my brother's recall of him is not nearly as vivid, although he does remember our rather strange visitor. The man who dressed differently to anyone we'd ever known would march into our bedroom like a soldier and stand there watching us as we played with our train set, as it manoeuvred itself magically down the track. I think he really loved trains as much as we did, as when we looked up at him, he would be fixated by our train. His eyes would be wide with an animated interest. When our game was finished, he would march out of our bedroom, give us a friendly salute, bow his head, and we would hear his feet walking away, tramping down the stairs. He always sounded as if he was marching, which made me wonder later on in life whether he'd been in the military or something, as what was he doing in Bridge Cottage anyway? Me and my brother used to call him the train man, as we only ever saw him when we played with our train set. I will reiterate that his presence in our lives was so normal that we never even thought for a moment it remotely strange, until years later when we would talk about him and realise that our idiosyncratic visitor was in fact a ghost. None of my parents ever saw him, although they did claim to have heard someone marching around, and often sensed they were not alone, especially when a blast of cold air entered the room and went wafting past them, and they would both look at each other and say, "What the hell?" It was like you knew that someone was there, but you couldn't physically see anything at all, which was frustrating. My mother would want to believe there was an explanation to these rather extraordinary experiences, convincing herself that she had left the window open or something, and allowed an unfriendly draught to drift through the cottage, but the windows were always closed, and there was no explanation for that implausible windy blast of icy cold air that had whipped past them so quickly. She would claim she remembered definite cold spots in that cottage. There were other unorthodox things that happened in that cottage of ours that became commonplace to us, noises we became accustomed to. We would often hear feet running up and down the staircase, and no one would be there. And at night it could be more than a little intimidating to hear a man's heavy boots thumping around the staircase. The movements were much heavier than the trainman's were. My mother would put it down to old squeaking pipes in the house, but I think she knew all along that the noises on our staircase at night were not from old creaking pipes. I think she was deceiving herself. Sometimes we could smell tobacco on the air. Strange but delicious baking smells would waft through the house. My brother and I would be excited, thinking my mother was cooking a delicious cake for tea, and we'd be so disappointed to see that no one was even in the kitchen, and she wasn't baking anything at all. Our stomachs by then would be rumbling and churning. We'd have to settle for a dowdy cookie in a jar, usually a Jaffa cake, a Garibaldi, or if we were terribly lucky, a caramel digestive. But it seemed so awfully disappointing compared to the amazing smells we'd encountered, Its origins a complete mystery to us. I remember one night we heard a loud knocking at the front door. It was like an urgent sound that got your immediate attention, as if someone was in desperate trouble. It was in the middle of winter. It was freezing cold, as the wood-burning stove had long since burnt out in the entrance hall, and the fire in the main living room was out cold. So getting out of bed at this hour of the morning meant my fingers were like blocks of ice. We never had any radiators in our home, so all our warmth was generated as it had been done in earlier generations before us. Wood and coal for the wood-burning stove and fireplace, oil for the red aga, an oven in the kitchen, rather like a range, that remained on all the time, and was the place to go to when you needed to grab a little warmth and put your hand on one of those closed lids, where the numbing icy chill of your fingers would eventually melt away. My mother would dry all her tea cloths folded up nicely on top of each other on those closed aga lids, and even our socks. Believe me, those closed aga lids had multiple purposes and uses. I was 8 at the time, but I got out of bed hurriedly, putting on my dressing gown and slipping my icy feet into my sheepskin slippers. They were lovely and warm. My feet were not. My teeth were chattering. I was shivering. It was blisteringly cold out there, but I wanted to know who was at our door. I was a naturally inquisitive, inquiring child, and if someone was knocking at our door, at this godless hour of the night, not even an Arctic wind would put me off finding out who it was. My very sensible brother, on the other hand, could not have cared less. He was not interested enough to get out of a cosy warm bed to see what was going on. He grumbled something under his breath, as if annoyed to have his sleep so rudely interrupted. I heard him say something like, "Go away! Go away!" He then pulled the duvet over his head, as if he wanted to barricade the outside world from uncouthly interfering in his vivid dreams. I could hear my father's reluctant, grudging voice saying, "Bloody hell! Who's banging on our door at this time of night? No, it's not even night anymore. It's 2 a.m, for goodness sake." "Well, maybe it's important," said my mother. "Maybe it's a local villager in some kind of trouble, and they need your help. You better go and answer it." I noticed my mother wisely remained in her bed, as she, like my brother, had no intention of braving the winter chill at this ungodly time. My unenthusiastic father continues to moan as he puts on his striped navy blue dressing gown, rather tentatively, tying the material belt around his middle, and slipping his icy cold feet into slippers not dissimilar to my own. I follow him eagerly down the staircase towards the passage that leads directly to the front door, as he hesitantly pulls back the latch to open it, which he does with a measure of caution. I notice in one hand he is surreptitiously holding a baseball bat behind his back. It had never occurred to me that our visitor might not be the friendly kind, as crime in our village was pretty non-existent, but my father was naturally too astute to ever be taken off guard. Even in the cottage when I breathe out, I can see mists of Arctic air billowing out of my mouth like the vapour from a boiling kettle. The fractious door unwillingly opens with a loud protesting creak, as it stood on those hinges for over 300 years, so it's entitled to be a little cranky and peevishly grouchy in the circumstances. An angry gust of icy wind bursts into the house. I am astounded by what I am beholding. Even my father's eyes have grown wide like saucers, as we see a military, very distinguished-looking gentleman, wearing a black top hat and a tight-fitting blue jacket with gold buttons down the centre, sitting on the back of a magnificent black horse. The horse is neighing and breathing through his nostrils as well as kicking up the ground with one of his hooves. The man is saluting my father. "Message for Master Harris de Gavania. Tell him it's not for the reckoning. The time is not ripe yet, but he will be kept duly informed." And then the man and the horse start to gallop away, but they gallop right through our hedge, not over it, through it, as if it wasn't even there, and they vanished before our eyes. My father looked at me. "Did you see that, son?" I nodded. "What was that, Daddy? Who was the man, and where did he go? How could he ride his horse through the hedge like that? It's not normal to ride through a hedge. No one can do that." "I don't know, son," said my father. running a hand through his hair, looking very perturbed.
"Not for the reckoning? What the hell is that all supposed to mean? I've seen everything now."
For a long time I wondered who the mysterious man was that I'd seen, and why he disappeared before our eyes. We did a historic check on our cottage to find out that over 280 years ago, a man called Harris de Gavania had owned the property. But what the message was he was supposed to have received actually meant, your guess is as good as mine, and leaves me with more questions than answers. "We have something to tell you, boys," my parents told us one day, when we were having dinner around the oakwood table in the kitchen. We always ate our meals in the kitchen, unless we were entertaining, and that was when we would eat in the entrance hall, which was also a dining room, with its large wood-burning stove set in the grand fireplace there, with a fabulous mantel, and there were pictures on the walls of hunting scenes, with men wearing red jackets, galloping on horseback with their dogs across the English countryside. My mother was an excellent cook, and we were having stew and dumplings that evening, and warm steam was rising from the plates, and the aromatic smells of the melt-in-the-mouth tender meat was absolutely delicious. Me and my brother polished our plates clean, but my parents hadn't touched a thing on their plates, although I did see my father fiddle around with his dumpling as he attacked it with his fork, but it never ever entered his mouth, which was decidedly odd. I'd never seen my father playing with his food like this before, so I knew something was up. My father, at over 6 foot tall, could eat like a horse most nights of the week. Sometimes he even had third helpings, but not tonight. It was almost as if his normal, healthy appetite had all but abandoned him. What was going on? Why were my parents behaving so strangely, looking at each other for moral support, encouraging each other with brief, soulful glances? We knew that whatever it was important, as my parents' expressions were very stern, troubled even, fraught with tension. I could see that my mother was biting her lip awkwardly, and a horrifying thought suddenly drifted into my mind, like a white feather on the wind. Oh, please, God, they weren't getting divorced, were they? No, that can't be it. My parents absolutely adored each other. But why did this unsavoury conversation the family was about to have almost reek of an objectionable, unpalatable smell that I did not want to smell? Why did I wish I wasn't sitting around the dinner table right now? Why did I want the ground to swallow me whole? Why did I not want to be here? What did they want to impart to us that was so pressingly important that it demanded such solemn attention? And whatever it was, I knew it wasn't good. I surreptitiously glanced over to my brother. His back was sitting up rigidly straight like a pencil. He was tapping his pudding spoon on the table, wearing an anxious, aggrieved expression on his face, as if he too perceived that whatever we were about to be told, it wasn't going to be at all good. I clenched my fingers tightly together, in an arch, something I always did when I was terribly nervous, and I began to tap one leg under the table. "Please will you stop doing that, Colton?" my mother said to me, looking marginally annoyed. "I need you to listen to what your father has to say. It's terribly important."
"I'm going to live in Alaska for good," my father told us. "I'm buying a cabin there. I want to live in the wilderness. But you boys and your mother can visit me as often as you like there. It can be like a second home to you. You can have one home here in England, another home in Alaska. Now, won't that be nice for the both of you?"
"What are you doing, Daddy?" I asked obsequiously. "Why are you leaving us? We don't want you to go. You're not getting divorced, are you? Ryan's parents are divorced. They live in separate houses. They don't even talk to each other anymore. Ryan says his parents hate each other now, call each other all kinds of horrible names. It really upsets him so much." My father grabs my mother's hands. They both look into each other's eyes with such tenderness. I notice my mother's eyes are misting over with tears. My dad looks sorrowful.
"Me and your mother are not splitting up, son. We love each other too much for that. But your mother doesn't want to live in Alaska, and I don't want to live in this village. It's too much for me, living this kind of lifestyle. It's driving me crazy. I grew up in Alaska, you see, son, and this is a very different life for me. It's not for me, son, living here in a little village like this. But your mother doesn't want to move to Alaska permanently. It's like we've reached a checkmate position on the chessboard. So that's why we've reached this very difficult decision. But no, we're not splitting up.
Your father finds it oppressively claustrophobic living here, sweetheart. And I do understand where he's coming from, because Alaska is such a huge place. The wilderness goes on forever. So this village is very small by contrast, interjects my mother, trying to sound positive and upbeat, as if my father leaving home was no big deal. You see, a little English village, as charming as it may be, is not enough for your father. He wants more. He needs a great adventure. Your father is a venturesome kind of character. What does claustrophobic mean, Mummy? I asked. It means your father feels closed in. He wants to live in a bigger place, where there's lots and lots of space, open wilderness. That's what he was used to growing up. Whereas your Mummy doesn't want to live in Alaska. It's very beautiful in Alaska. The landscape is stunning. The views are prepossessing. Especially in summer and spring, it's gorgeous there. But it's not like that all year round. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem to go there at all for me. It's the winters that are freezing. And when it's cold, the days are dark and shorter too. It's not easy to live there in the winter months, I can assure you. And that's why I don't want to go there. Why not move, Mummy? Why don't we go to Alaska so we can all live with Daddy in his cabin? We don't mind moving to another country, do we, Luton? We don't even care if it's cold. It gets cold here too. Luton frowns at me. He's giving me that disagreeable look. He hates it when I announce what he wants, as Luton has a mind of his own, and more often than not it contradicts my own opinion, and on this occasion it's no different. He actually is siding with my mother. I don't want to live anywhere else. I like it here. I have lots and lots of friends. I also don't want to live in freezing cold weather. It's bad enough in England, but 1,000 times worse in Alaska, so no, I'll only go there in summer and spring, and that's final. I want to live here too, sweetheart, says my mother, looking at me. I like to be close to your grandparents, and Luton's absolutely right about what he says. Alaska gets much colder than here in winter, and you know how I can't abide cold weather as it is. It's a big, big place, beautiful too, but I couldn't live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. And that's exactly what your father wants. I'd feel so isolated, so alone, so cut off from the rest of the world, and from all my good friends. I'm much more social than your father is. It would make me miserable, just living there all the time, with no interaction with others. But your father enjoys a remote, isolated lifestyle like that. He loves being close and personal to nature. We both want different things in that regard, but we love each other too much to get a divorce. So we'll spend the summer holidays in Alaska with your dad, all three of us. Somehow we'll manage to make it work. See if we don't, she says, reaching out to squeeze my hands affectionately. I push her arm away from me. Don't touch me, Mummy. Don't you dare touch me. You're horrible. So are you, Dad. You only think about yourselves. You don't care about us. You don't care about us at all. If you did, you wouldn't be doing this to us. You're so mean, I say, stomping out of the dining room and darting up the staircase to drown my sorrows on my duvet. Oh dear, oh dear. He's such a sensitive soul, isn't he? I knew he'd react like that. I'll go and have a word with him. Me and my brother were very upset about this strange announcement. My father was leaving us, but then he wasn't. My parents were not getting a divorce, but we were going to live in separate countries. They loved each other, but they couldn't be together. It was like they loved each other too much to split up, but not enough to agree to live in the same country. So me and my brother, along with my mother, had to get used to regular trips to Alaska in the summer holidays, when we would be reunited with our father again. My mother point blank refused to go to Alaska during the winter months, but my father did not want to remain in England. It was a catch-22 situation. In the end, far from thinking me and my brother had a raw deal, we soon began to realise that it was really cool having my father living in a remote cabin in Alaska. It suited him so much. I could see he was thriving with his rather unorthodox, free-spirited, maverick lifestyle. I'd never seen him so happy. When he and my mother reunited, they were like a couple of lovesick teenagers who couldn't keep their hands off each other. I remember me and my brother would keep saying to them, "Go get a room, Mum and Dad." There was no doubt how much in love my parents were with each other, but it would seem absence makes the heart grow stronger. That was certainly the case for both of my parents. For some bizarre, incongruous reason, their long-distance relationship worked, and it still does all these years later. It's really curious, but each to his own, that's all I can say. My parents are both so independent, but they are together during the summer and spring. My mother would say that lots of people have long-distance relationships, and with modern technology these days, it's a lot easier to stay in touch. So there we are, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 is tomorrow night, where they have a very terrifying experience of encountering the Alaskan Kushtaka. So until next time, good night and goodbye.